I'm Liz Faublis, and this is Currents. Are business owners who oppose the federal contraception mandate bigots? We get some answers. Plus, gone but not forgotten, families pray for loved ones who died too young.
What this mass is to try to do is to recognize and bring to the public's awareness the death of these newborn infants that are abandoned sometimes, that are left in undescribed areas.
And fighting for life amid a wall of opposition.
Go to the streets and proclaim God. Go to the streets and proclaim the sacredness of life. You must resist to save your souls.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. When you think of the HHS mandate, many issues may come to mind. Now, some of you who tune into Currents regularly or keep up with the contentious debate between U.S. bishops and the government about the implications of the rule have become all too familiar with terms like violation of religious liberty, offending rights of conscience, assault on the First Amendment. And you also know that Catholic leaders, religious organizations, hospitals, universities have turned to the legal system, filing lawsuits against the Obama administration, challenging a policy that would force them to offer contraception, sterilization, and abortion-inducing drugs in their employee health plans without a copayment. Well, the American Civil Liberties Union has added yet another dimension to the ongoing dispute, the issue of bigotry. The ACLU suggests that if taken in a historical context, to exempt certain businesses from the mandate is tantamount to universities, schools, and businesses which claimed in court that right to religious liberty entitled them to discriminate against African Americans. The organization adds it is also the same as employers that years ago claimed their religious beliefs entitled them to pay men more than women based on a claim of head of household. Well, CatholicVote.org calls these claims of segregation shocking and unfair. I spoke to Joshua Mercer, Communications Director for Catholic Vote, earlier today. All right, Josh, now to be clear, at issue here is your lawsuit challenging the HHS mandate on behalf of a private Catholic business owner in St. Louis. Now, the ACLU supports the government's motion to dismiss this case on the basis of gender equality, and this is your greatest point of contention, correct?
Right. I mean, we have two major problems with what the ACLU is trying to allege. First of all, the scurrilous charge that any Catholic businessman who refuses to offer birth control, sterilizations, or abortion drugs is somehow akin to a racist motel owner back in the 50s or 60s who wouldn't rent to African Americans. That is just absolutely repugnant. You know, that's, of course, a very unfortunate part of our past, and to drudge it up here now 50 years later, just because somebody doesn't want to have to provide abortion drugs, which kill small human beings, or sterilizations and birth control at no cost. It's an analogy that is absolutely repugnant and totally uncalled for. And so that's our major problem with this. We consider it a smear by the ACLU against, I mean, in other words, it's Catholic teaching to have a moral concern, a moral problem with birth control, sterilizations, and of course abortion drugs. And if you're just going to equate everyone who holds those Catholic teachings as a bigot, like this business owner Frank O'Brien, then aren't you saying the same about Pope Benedict and Cardinal Dolan? Are you calling them bigots as well? Is every Catholic a bigot?
And Josh, I also want to say, from your point of view, while you do find this outrageous, the concern is, as we discussed, that courts do look at these amicus briefs, like judges do review them. So there is a concern that it could have some impact and it would not be in your favor.
Right. There's several of these different lawsuits going across the country, and the ACLU decided to pick this one, and it's just unfortunate. I mean, judges do look at the amicus briefs filed on behalf of both parties. They do take a look at the arguments, and they have sometimes, agreed to those arguments. And what they're trying to allege is that it would somehow, violate rights, as you say, if it did not offer it. Frank O'Brien already provides great health care plan, for his employees. So the question isn't is he providing it or not. The question is can the government force him to provide things which he considers totally immoral? And the ACLU is saying, it minimally, if at all, unquote, burdens our rights of religious liberty.
Yeah,
Minimally,
I did see that. I did see that in the brief, that they did say that it was a minimal effect to religious liberty. And I also did see that they argue that the ability to have full control over reproductive lives and to be able to decide whether and when to have children is an important component of gender equality. Now, do you disagree on the basis that they have made this a contraception issue? Because I know you've said this is not a contraception issue, this is a religious liberties issue.
Well, I mean, if they're trying to state that, those things are necessary in order to have, full reproductive rights, what exactly does that have to do with forcing, employers to provide it in healthcare benefits? Obviously, sterilization, birth control pills, and abortion drugs, unfortunately, certainly abortion drugs, that's the most awful. All three of those things are perfectly legal. Anyone can purchase them if they want to. The question is, on an unprecedented power grab by the federal government, can the federal government force every employer in the country practically to have to provide these services, in their health care benefits, but they're going to drive out the cost? And they're not only provided, they're provided for absolutely free. I think it's just a way for President Obama to win over votes. It's got nothing to do with really trying to improve health care. He's just trying to win votes in a tough re-election campaign. And he thinks, well, who cares about who's sympathetic with businessmen or Catholic archbishops? Let's just go ahead and push for this bill. And the point is, no, absolutely not. The First Amendment protects the free exercise of religion. It protects the rights of conscience of people, and we think this is just a humongous overstep by the federal government to try to and we don't think it I mean, again, I want to remind your viewers, Frank O'Brien has been providing wonderful health care for his employees, and this regulation isn't actually going to improve things. It's just going to drive up the cost. We think it's unfortunate.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Josh, but I really want your opinion on this in the time that we have left. Does this St. Louis company's case against the government, as well as the dozens of others now in litigation, open the door to countless anti-discrimination suits on claims mandated by a religious belief, which is yet another claim that the amicus brief by the ACLU is making? Do you agree?
I definitely think if so long as the federal government is going to try to force health services that a large portion of the population have a religious objection to providing, then I think there is a problem. But again, it's a circumstance where we really haven't seen too much people suing, business owners suing because they don't want to provide basic health care. In other words, there are those people who, for religious reasons, don't even get transfusions and that kind of stuff. But I haven't heard of businesses saying we don't want to provide health care that does basic health services like that, which some people might religiously object to, but that really hasn't been the case. So this is really new territory. And again, it's a fight that was brought to us. So this is just a response to make sure we can continue to go about the way we were doing business beforehand.
All right, Josh, thank you very much. And I do understand you are preparing a formal response that may go out this week. We'll be very interested to talking with you about that in the future. But thank you so much for joining us today. I always like talking to you.
It was a pleasure to talk with you and to let your viewers know about this important case.
All right, Josh, thank you. Stay tuned. The day's top headlines after the break. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. In tonight's headlines, no one has come forward to claim responsibility yet for the deadly church attack that occurred in Nigeria on Monday night. 19 were killed when a gunman shot churchgoers in the state of Kaji. The attackers shot at a Bible study congregation, killing the pastor. Boko Haram is suspected to be behind the attack, as members have carried out similar assaults on churches in the past. And in other news, Catholic Latinos are now examining a threatening political landscape. Over 100 Catholic Hispanic leaders will be gathering in Miami at the end of the month to defend religious freedom, among other topics in modern-day America. Some noteworthy individuals that are scheduled to speak at the event are Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles, Professor Robert Destro of Columbus School of Law, Supreme Knight Carl Anderson of the Knights of Columbus, Superintendent Alberto Vasquez Matios of the Diocese of St. Petersburg, and National Review online editor Catherine Jean Lopez. Now, this conference will be a critical opportunity for lay Catholic leaders from across the U.S. to find answers in today's threatening political landscape, said Robert Aguirre. He's president and CEO of the San San Antonio-based Catholic Association of Latino Leaders. Well, are you part of the I Thirst movement? What is the I Thirst movement? Rome Report explains.
Mother Teresa died on September 5, 1997, but her legacy is still felt today. The order she founded in 1950, the Missionaries of Charity, continues to grow in followers. In her work of serving the poorest of the poor, she has been joined by priests, members of religious orders, and in the past 6 years, laity. Their movement is called I Thirst, and they just had their first international meeting in Rome.
We want to be part of your charism. We don't want to just be co-workers and collaborators, but really we want to be in it, sharing it in the grace. Because to be part of I Thirst movement, it's not only do something and say something, but to belong to Christ.
Among its members is the lawyer Juan Emilio Suen. At 16 years old, he left his faith, but then renewed it when he was 21 during a volunteer trip with the Missionaries of Charity in Romania. He says the trip helped to change his life. He attended retreats to consider becoming a priest, but found his vocation lay elsewhere. 2 months ago, he married Nuria Medina, also from the movement I Thirst. She's a nurse and had the same concerns as Juan Emilio, until she realized she was meant to marry him. Love begins with your family, those closest to you. Mother Teresa always said that sometimes it's very easy to love those who are far away and very difficult to love those who are close. So every day Nuria loved me as the poorest of the poor, and I try to do the same for her. I needed to go back to my family, my workplace, with people that I have near, which is where my struggle was, and I found Juan Emilio. With him I realized that everything was better. During their honeymoon in India, they visited the tomb of Mother Teresa to thank her for her work and helping to bring them together.
The Pope's support for the Knights of Columbus shows his support for religious freedom. Those words from Baltimore Archbishop William Lori. The Pope recently publicly sent a message of encouragement to the National Convention of the Knights meeting in Anaheim, California. The Knights have been among the most vocal opponents of the federal mandate, which requires employers to offer health plans that pay for sterilization and abortion-inducing drugs. I believe the Holy Father is making that abundantly clear, that the defense of religious liberty has to be a primary focus, stated Archbishop Lori. Well, to internet news now, where a website begins a Year of Faith countdown. Rome Reports has the details.
To celebrate the 50th anniversary of the opening of Vatican II, Benedict XVI will proclaim the Year of Faith on October 11th. It's meant to be a time for Catholics to study and better understand faith. This clock shows the countdown until the beginning of the thematic year. It's located on the website that was created by the Pontifical Council for the new evangelization. It's meant to provide a meeting point for all those taking part. Here one can also find some of the main messages by the Pope, including his letter Porta Fidei, which was used to call for the Year of Faith. The site also offers the original text of Vatican II in 12 languages, as well as an online catechism and the text and videos of the main catechist by Benedict XVI. There is also a calendar with the major events being held around the world this year. It explains the mission of this young Pontifical Council for the new evangelization, which was founded in 2010 by Benedict XVI. The site can be viewed in English and Italian, with more languages to come soon. The Year of Faith can also be followed on most social networks such as Facebook and Twitter.
And finally tonight, the rich history behind the Pope's summer home. It's a history that has been centuries in the making. Saverio Petrillo is the director of the Pontifical Villas at Castel Gandolfo and has worked at the villas for 50 years. He recently told CNA that Castel Gandolfo has served as a papal retreat since the 17th century. Back then, Pope Urban VIII used the facilities, and so have 15 of the last 31 popes. Now, one notable part of the home is a portico that possesses smokestains dating back to World War II. When the Allied troops landed at Anzio, the Holy Father welcomed around 10,000 people who will found refuge there, Petrillo said. Well, stay tuned. There's more currents after the break. Coming up, a mass of remembrance for those in the Book of Life.
We are truly honoring all the children who have lost their life right to live among us.
Welcome back. In 2011, New York became the 32nd state to pass the Missing Angels Bill into law. The measure grants certificates of birth to parents of stillborn babies. Now, one of the main proponents of the bill is the Arizona-based Miss Foundation, which provides support to grieving families and works to reduce the number of infant and toddler deaths. And a legislative advocate for the Miss Foundation was one of the driving forces behind a mass for stillborn children, many of whom are buried on Hart Island in the Long Island Sound. The mass took place this past Monday at the Church of the Holy Innocents in Manhattan.
The Mass is important to me because I want the public to know about the 700,000 babies that are buried on Hart Island, and that no official Mass services have ever been said for them. And my sister is among them. She was stillborn in 1942. So the Mass essentially was for her and for all the babies that are over there in the island.
The families who have lost a child through abortion, miscarriage, or stillbirth, they are still grieving. They mourn the loss of that beloved child. And so somehow we want to bring a closure to them, and bring comfort and consolation. That is really the ministry that we are doing.
I was overcome with emotions that I thought that I pretty much had hidden, that she has recognition now from the church that her life, her time here didn't matter.
What this Mass is to try to do is to recognize and bring to the public's awareness the death of these newborn infants that are abandoned sometimes, that are left in unscribed areas, and or where families cannot afford to bury a child.
The Mass is also important because we want people to know through this Mass that New York State has passed new legislation creating stillbirth certificates, so that if any mother's had a stillborn, they can apply for a certificate. It's basically documentation and for these babies.
I think it gave them a better understanding of the unborns. A lot of the times when we think of an unborn child, we don't actually see someone so formed, someone that has a family, that has a community.
We are truly honoring all the children who have lost a life right to live among us. We promote life, and in the culture of death we live in, we need to hold fast to the life entrusted to us, and we try to nurture our own life, enrich it through caring for the unborn.
And stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. When we return, trying to bring back a culture of life.
We've been brainwashed to believe that it's not an unborn baby, and it is. And you know, until we help change the hearts and minds of America.
Finally tonight, he's been at the center of the Right to Life movement for many years. Monsignor Philip Riley has taken the fight for life to the streets of New York City, starting the pro-life ministry Helpers of God's Precious Infants more than 20 years ago. What began here in the Diocese of Brooklyn has grown into a worldwide effort. Back in May, Monsignor Riley gave a topical talk at St. Ephraim's Church in Dyker Heights at a communion breakfast for the Life Center of New York.
New York City is the capital abortion of the country. It's a nomenclature that we wish we didn't have.
Bless us, O Lord, and these your gifts, which we are about to receive from your goodness, through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Monsignor. Thank you. Okay, everyone, to the food. Today is an annual communion breakfast that we have each year, the Life Center. That's what we are. We're a pro-life crisis pregnancy center. Secular relativism is a predominant philosophy that we're facing today in our country and throughout the world, I believe. And what it says is that there's no right or wrong, and you do whatever you want. We wanted to have our dear Monsignor Riley, who's on our advisory board, give an expose of that.
1967, They were trying to legalize abortion in New York State. We went from a culture of life to a culture of death. No, in the law, we placed our values, and they were based on Judeo-Christian ethics. The wisdom that one generation has that hands on to the next, that wisdom, it's contained normally in the law. The law cannot always stop evil, but it must not legalize evil as a good and protect it in the law.
Abortion is not being enforced upon me. I'm not being allowed to stop abortion, okay? So there's not much difference between ourselves and China. See, there's a profound difference between saying you can't stop everybody from having abortion. You can't stop everybody from not praying. But by God, you must not legislate no prayer in public. No child is to be protected by the law. You legislate all this evil and no one resists because they're brainwashed into choice.
We've been brainwashed to believe that it's not an unborn baby, and it is. And, you know, until we help change the hearts and minds of America, this Holocaust, we call it, is going to continue.
I would say we have a good 80 to 90% success rate, and we do whatever we can to direct a woman away from an abortion.
Well, we're not getting the girls we used to get in because I think it's the morning after pill, and a lot more is done in secret.
I was a teacher and I saw it in the public schools. I saw a lot of secular relativism getting pushed. I'd like to do something to help, and right now I haven't figured out exactly where I'm going with it, but I'm going to try to find a good way.
The feminist movement, I believe, established a culture of death in the sense that it said a woman has a right to do whatever she wants with her body, but that's not what is right. What about the child? The child in the womb has nothing to say. It's a living creature, a life like you and I were when we were conceived.
Go to the streets and proclaim God. Go to the streets and proclaim the sacredness of life. You go to the streets in prayer and peace and proclaim no one has the right. You must resist to save your souls.
And that is all for tonight. Be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. You can also follow us on Twitter. Look for us there at CurrentsNY. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. We leave you tonight with works of art from Progetto Arto Poli. The group, which is based in Italy, works to renew the aesthetics of Catholic churches and promote meditation through art. Thank you for watching and have a good night.